She's being a diva. She's being difficult.
I know. If you're gonna be like that.
I don't want to give you my tea now.
You got tattooed in the last few seconds.
Okay, so I don't need to put anything in these. I need a spoon. There are 2 teas.
Yes.
What did you say this bacon? Crispy?
Is that crispy enough for you? Crispier? What do we think? It's about right, I think. Welcome to Toad, back to the Toad Sessions. This is number 16. This is Johny Lamb, also recorder's £30 a bone. Because you've got one of those stories that goes into a press release and then just gets copied into every single article.
With an increasing kind of weird inaccuracy. And
is it? I mean,
I think it's sort of all that stuff sort of spiralled a little bit in a way. Kind of like if you refer to the press release, there's nothing in it that isn't true.
Right.
But subsequently, there's kind of when people kind of rewrite it, bits get left out, and then that becomes the truth. And then so you end up kind of doing interviews that are kind of about kind of like how you're from Shetland and you're like a massive alcoholic. But I was born in Gloucester, but I never lived there, and immediately went to Shetland straight after being born, and then sort of grew up there for a while, and then my dad decided to become a priest, and so he went to like theological college in England, and we went, and then.
At what sort of age? That was when you moved down south, was it? At what age was that roughly?
6.
So you're not very Shetlandian. No,
I'm not. I mean, not really. It's that kind of. I have a kind of particular relationship with the Shetlands, given that because we never settled anywhere after we left, and it was. And I was really bitter about leaving. It's one, and I never kind of really got over that for some reason or another.
Even though it only happened when you were 6 years old.
Yeah. I've always been a bit angry about it.
Were you angry about it at the time, or is this kind of in retrospect?
At the time and now. Yeah, really. But then, so I sort of hung on to it as kind of like, well, that's where I learned to kind of walk and talk and all of these formative things. And I never really kind of coped very well in big towns and cities. And you know, hence the reason why I kind of moved back to the countryside and kind of probably intend to stay there now. But and then I did go back to Shetland last summer, and I had all of these kind of sort of very misguided ideas that kind of I would step off the ferry and there might be some bunting up and everyone would embrace me as a kind of homecoming lost soldier or something, and of course and then you kind of go somewhere and you find yourself as ill-fitting and as awkward there as you are anywhere else, and it's kind of like, that weird thing, if you don't kind of have, or you don't perceive yourself to have roots or kind of a home, then you kind of you end up with this kind of, it's almost kind of pathological thing where if anything bad goes wrong, you go like, everything would be better if I went there. Right. And then you go there, and of course you take all of your problems with you and all of those things with you, and then you kind of go, oh, this isn't working out, maybe I'll go there, and then you never quite manage to kind of convince yourself that what you need to do is just live your life well wherever you are, and that's kind of alright, and that's probably what most people do.
And when I said I was here, always I'm thinking of them. Oh, did I wish it was different? Oh, did I wish it was different? But now I live. But now I live on the Maritime Line.
Right, that was the Maritime Line. You're saying that's a new song?
Yes.
When you write new songs, do you have a plan for what they're going to be a part of in future or not?
I never used to, but at the moment I do. I'm sort of working on something quite specific.
Right.
And the idea is to make a record that's entirely kind of focused on place and itinerancy, as we've just been kind of talking about, and the idea is to kind of focus on my kind of misconceptions about my own geography, like the Shetland thing, and that kind of that idea of the itinerant going back and sort of failing to kind of be a part of the place that he thought he was a part of. And then there's the other geography, which is the kind of implicitly, the one that's implicitly about heritage and blood,
right?
Which for me is Ireland as a kind of second generation kind of Irish migrant, and then the kind of place where you are now, which is Cornwall. So there's these three kind of geographies that interact on the record, and the songs, and they're now kind of, I'm now sort of engaged in sort of songwriting methods that I haven't employed before, where there's a lot of field recording, and the shapes of landscapes are kind of dictating melodies, and like, so that song is in the same key as the big naval ships kind of hum in the harbour in Falmouth. So yeah, so I was down in the harbour, which and I was kind of recording this thing, and then I took it back, and there's the kind of recorded version will kind of have a drone that kind of is based around that recording, and so the guitar's written around that, and and there's sort of three guitar parts that are supposed to sound like the rain in the harbour. I've become quite obsessed with the idea of kind of onomatopoeia in music, and music that sounds like where it's about and where it's from and stuff like that. So it's kind of it's a new thing that I'm trying out, but I've become sort of interested in the idea of having a kind of a very specific sort of musical purpose rather than just writing.
You're wrong was all she said. I'm already gone was what she meant. I didn't fucking care, 'cause I could have white and Mackay's just like anyone I know.
Struggle a bit with the word folk at the moment, because it does get bandied around a lot, but it's getting to the stage now where it's almost as meaningless as indie.
It's entirely meaningless, and I have this whole thing about that folk as a noun is a word that's in crisis. because of that kind of casual use, but then you have people who try and the system, the classification of folk music as kind of set up by the British Council for Traditional Music or whatever excludes all of us,
right?
And probably even like Spires and Bowden to some respect from being folk musicians, and so we kind of use it much more casually. But then that casual use kind of means, well, if you can call me a folk singer, why can't you call Jack Johnson a folk singer, and so on and so on and so on. And if we're going to talk about the kind of the criteria for what folk music does or what its purpose is historically, then surely the continuation of that kind of oral tradition and the kind of articulation of working class subculture or whatever, then that's probably end-ups, isn't it?
Yeah, I was going to say it's probably not more appropriate to apply it to dance music in some senses, but
it's an interesting thing, and I think that like I read that thing where John Spires was kind of lamenting the loss of social singing in The Guardian, and it's like, well, it does happen, John. It's just you're not there, and it's like they're not going to be singing the bitter withy. They're going to be doing I don't know, like rap battles or football chants or all of those things.
I worked in Sutton Harbour for sweet fuck all an hour, but what I earned, less £50, could get me back to yourself.